You know that moment when you're in a conversation and someone says something slightly inaccurate, and your brain can't let it go? Not because you want to correct them, not because you need to look impressive, but because something inside you is quietly rearranging the logic, tracing the gaps, noticing the inconsistencies. Or maybe it's different for you. Maybe it's the way you replay conversations hours later, refining what you could have said. The way you can't skim information without wanting to understand it properly. The way you instinctively search for patterns in people, systems, problems. And yet, at the same time, you've probably had moments where you thought, if I'm so smart, why don't I feel like it? Because society has a very loud definition of intelligence. Fast answers, perfect grades, quick wit, public confidence. And if you don't perform intelligence in that specific way, it's easy to assume you don't have it. But here's what most people never realize. Intelligence isn't a personality trait. It's not a vibe. It's not even fixed. It's a pattern of attention, and that pattern can be strengthened. When people talk about being smart, they often imagine something genetic, something you either won the lottery on or didn't, a kind of invisible IQ ceiling hovering over your life. But neuroscience paints a different picture. Your brain is not a static machine. It's plastic, literally. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself based on how you use it. Every time you struggle through a difficult concept, every time you force yourself to focus, every time you sit with confusion instead of escaping it, tiny structural changes occur in your neural pathways. The more you use certain circuits, the stronger and faster they become. Intelligence, in many ways, is the efficiency of those circuits, which means it isn't about how fast you answer, it's about how deeply you process, and depth is rarely loud. There's a certain kind of person who has always felt almost smart. Teachers said you had potential. Friends come to you for advice. You understand complex emotional dynamics easily. But when it comes to formal settings, exams, interviews, high-pressure moments, your mind sometimes blanks. That's not a lack of intelligence. That's your nervous system. When your brain senses threat, even social threat like being judged, it shifts resources away from the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning and working memory. Blood flow prioritizes survival systems instead of analytical thinking. So if you've ever felt dumb under pressure but sharp in solitude, that's biology, not identity. There's more going on here than people realize. Becoming smart is less about cramming information and more about regulating your nervous system enough to access the intelligence you already have. Studies on working memory show something fascinating. Anxiety consumes cognitive bandwidth. When part of your mental energy is monitoring how you're being perceived, less energy is available for reasoning. In other words, insecurity makes you look less intelligent than you are. Confidence doesn't create intelligence, it reveals it. But here's the part that's rarely explained correctly. There are different types of intelligence, and society overvalues one: rapid analytical recall. The student who can answer immediately, the person who debates effortlessly, the quick thinker. But there's another kind: slow integration, the kind where information sinks in over time, where connections are made quietly, where understanding deepens in layers. Neuroscientists have found that deep learning involves something called myelination, a process where neural pathways become insulated through repetition and focus. The more you engage with a concept thoughtfully, the more efficient that pathway becomes, which means intelligence grows in stillness, not performance. This is why some people seem late bloomers. Their brains are integrating slowly but thoroughly, and when it clicks deeply. A lot of how you relate to intelligence started early. If you were praised for being smart instead of being curious, you may have learned to protect that label, to avoid situations where you might look confused, to stick to what you already know. Psychologist Dweck's research on fixed versus growth mindsets revealed something subtle but powerful.
Children praised for innate intelligence became more risk-averse over time. They didn't want to threaten the identity of being smart. But children praised for effort leaned into challenge. They weren't protecting a label, they were building capacity. If intelligence felt fragile growing up, you might unconsciously avoid environments where you're a beginner. And that avoidance can quietly freeze growth. Not because you lack ability, but because your nervous system associates struggle with shame. There's something else, too. Your brain optimizes for what it repeatedly does. If most of your day is spent scrolling short-form content, your neural circuits strengthen for rapid novelty detection, not sustained focus. Attention is trainable, and attention is the doorway to intelligence. Deep work, the ability to focus without distraction, has been shown to increase cognitive capacity over time. When you focus intensely on a task, your brain builds stronger synaptic connections related to that domain. But modern environments fragment attention constantly, and fragmented attention produces shallow thinking. This isn't a moral failure, it's environmental conditioning. If you feel like you used to be smarter as a child, more curious, more imaginative, it might not be that your intelligence declined. It might be that your attention got hijacked. The good news is that attention can be reclaimed, and when it is, intelligence follows. There's also a misunderstanding about speed. Fast thinking is impressive, but slow thinking is powerful. Daniel Kahneman's work on System 1 and System 2 thinking describes two modes of cognition. System 1 is fast, intuitive, automatic. System 2 is slower, more deliberate, analytical. Most daily decisions rely on System 1, but insight, strategy, and creativity rely on System 2.
If you're someone who takes longer to respond, who needs time to think, who doesn't immediately jump into arguments, that might not be hesitation, it might be depth processing. And depth processing builds sophisticated mental models. Mental models are frameworks your brain uses to interpret the world. The more varied your experiences, reading, reflection, and conversations, the richer these models become. Over time, you stop memorizing answers. You start understanding principles. And principle-based thinking is a hallmark of mature intelligence. There's a quieter layer to all of this. Some people want to become smart because they feel behind peers, behind expectations, behind an invisible timeline. But intelligence doesn't operate on a timeline. It compounds. The brain strengthens where it is used consistently, not urgently. Cramming produces short-term recall. Consistency produces structural change. And structural change feels different. It feels less like sudden brilliance and more like increasing clarity, like fog slowly lifting. There's also emotional intelligence, often overlooked because it doesn't show up on standardized tests. The ability to read tone shifts, to sense when someone is uncomfortable, to understand your own reactions. Neuroscience shows that emotional regulation and cognitive function are deeply intertwined. The more regulated your emotional system, the more stable your cognitive performance, which means becoming smarter may begin with becoming calmer. Not suppressing emotion, but understanding it. Your brain cannot fully access higher reasoning while it is in fight or flight mode. Safety is cognitive fertilizer. And if you grew up in unpredictability, criticism, chaos, instability, your nervous system may have prioritized vigilance over exploration. Hypervigilance is intelligent in unsafe environments, but it consumes bandwidth. So sometimes increasing intelligence isn't about adding more information, it's about reducing internal noise. There's a paradox here. The people most obsessed with appearing intelligent often stunt their growth because they avoid looking uninformed. Meanwhile, those comfortable saying, "I don't know," expand rapidly. Curiosity is cognitively superior to ego protection.
Research on metacognition, thinking about thinking, shows that awareness of what you don't know is correlated with better learning outcomes. When you can accurately assess your gaps, you target them effectively. Overconfidence blocks growth. Self-awareness accelerates it. But here's something counterintuitive. Intelligence has trade-offs. Deep thinkers often overthink. Pattern recognition can become rumination. Sensitivity to nuance can become indecision. The same brain that analyzes beautifully can spiral beautifully too. So when you aim to become smarter, you're also strengthening your capacity to see complexity. Another thing people don't talk about enough is this. Being smart isn't one solid thing. You can be amazing at reading people and just okay at math. You can be great with words but terrible with directions. You might think strategically about life but struggle to memorize facts for an exam. Brains aren't built evenly. They grow in different areas at different speeds. But when we compare ourselves, we usually compare one tiny slice, one test, one skill, one moment. So when you think, maybe I'm not that smart, it's worth asking, compared to what? And who decided that was the only thing that counts? Getting smarter in any area isn't about just watching more videos or collecting information. It's about actually engaging with it, sitting with it, struggling with it a little, not just scrolling, but thinking. When you try to explain something out loud, even to yourself, your brain locks it in more deeply. When you teach someone else, even casually, you understand it better. But here's the part people don't like. At first, it feels awkward, slow, confused. You feel exposed, and a lot of people mistake that feeling for being bad at something, when really that's the exact moment your brain is stretching. There's always a phase in learning where everything feels messy, like your brain is full and nothing fits properly. It can feel frustrating, even overwhelming, but that discomfort isn't a sign to quit. It's a sign something new is forming. Growth doesn't happen when things feel easy. It happens right at the edge of confusion. Comfort feels safer, though, so most people stay just inside what they already know. They consume things that agree with them, things that feel familiar, and slowly, without realizing it, they stop expanding. Another quiet factor is language. The words you're exposed to shape how clearly you can think. Reading more, different perspectives, different styles, gives your brain more ways to understand the world. You begin trusting your own thoughts. You don't need as much reassurance. You notice patterns. You connect ideas. The truth is, the smartest people rarely walk around feeling smart all the time. The more you understand, the more you realize there's still so much you don't know. And that doesn't shrink you. It keeps you curious. So if you've ever felt like intelligence belongs to someone else, the naturally gifted, the top student, the confident speaker, it might help to rethink it. There's more happening in your mind than you probably give yourself credit for. And when you stop judging it and start supporting it, it becomes steady. Thank you for watching. If this video spoke to you in any way, make sure you subscribe for more interesting and thought-provoking videos. There's a lot more we're going to explore together.